All right, let's get right into it today. We're tackling a pretty big question
Yeah,
that's been on a lot of people's minds.
absolutely.
What led to all these economic problems we're seeing?
Right.
We've got some source material here,
Okay.
an excerpt that breaks down
Uh-huh.
the financial troubles of a certain country. About
Yeah,
what went wrong.
the root of it.
Exactly,
Hmm.
and some of the stuff they talk about is pretty intense.
Oh. Like what?
Well, they mention speculative windfall income,
Okay.
credit doping,
Mm.
even a Ponzi zone.
Wow. That's
It's heavy stuff.
is.
But luckily, we've got our expert here
Hopefully I can help.
to help us make sense of it all.
I'll do my best.
So, what's the main takeaway?
Yeah.
What does the source say is
Yeah.
the main reason behind this whole economic mess?
Well, they make a pretty strong argument
Okay.
connecting how the government managed or mismanaged rather
Okay.
the public debt
Uh-huh.
with how credit was allowed to grow out of control.
Interesting.
And they say those two things together
Yeah.
created this this overheated economy
Okay.
where there was just way too much speculation.
I see.
And now
We're seeing what happened.
exactly.
So let's dig into that a bit.
Sure.
The source talks about a big jump in public debt
Right.
after things were, relatively stable for a while.
Yeah.
And they blame that on a few different things.
Right.
Rebuilding after an earthquake,
Uh-huh.
a new government with some ambitious plans,
Makes
that
sense.
kind of thing.
I'd follow you.
And the way they dealt with all that
Yeah.
was through something called financing.
Right.
And that's where things get a
Interesting.
little tricky.
Yeah. Deficit financing basically means
Interesting.
the government is spending more money
Uh-huh.
than it's bringing in.
Oh, I
And
right.
sometimes that's necessary.
Right.
But the source says that in this case, it was probably the wrong approach
How so?
because it basically pumped all this money into the economy,
Okay.
but it didn't actually lead to more
Yeah.
productive output.
So that's like
You see what I mean?
creating this fake growth.
Exactly. It's not real sustainable growth.
Gotcha.
And then on top of all that,
Oh, there's more.
yeah, they talk about this
Okay.
this uncontrolled credit growth.
What does that mean?
Well, it means there wasn't enough regulation,
Uh-huh.
especially in the banking industry
Okay.
and these cooperative sectors.
I see.
And that made it even easier.
For people to get credit.
Yeah, and that just fueled even more speculation.
Especially in real estate, it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely. That was a big one.
Okay, so we've got this situation where it's easy to get loans,
Yeah,
and that's pushing up the prices of things like houses.
right.
And then people are borrowing even more money.
Against those inflated prices, yeah.
It's like a vicious cycle.
It is, and that's where this idea of speculative windfall income comes in.
What's that?
Well, it basically means that when credit is easy to get
Uh-huh.
and the prices of assets keep going up,
Yeah.
people start making a lot of money.
Just from speculation.
Exactly. But it creates this this feedback.
Okay.
It's all very fragile.
And the source gives some examples
Oh, yeah.
of what can happen when an economy gets too...
Overheated.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
this deposit crunch.
Yeah, that happened after the credit boom.
And all that rebuilding after the earthquake.
Right. And more recently,
Yeah.
they talk about problems with foreign currency reserves. These examples are,
Yeah.
they really show you how dangerous it is.
To have an economy that's based
Yeah.
on speculation.
Exactly. And this is where they use that term,
Okay.
Ponzi zone.
Yeah.
They're basically saying
data.
that the whole system
Uh-huh.
needs more and more new money
Just
just to keep going.
to stay afloat.
Exactly.
Makes you wonder, like, where were the regulators in all this?
Right.
The source mentions that they did eventually step in.
Mm.
They put a limit on these share loans and
Yeah.
these working capital guidelines,
Right.
but it sounds like it was a little too late.
It does seem that way, yeah.
Like they were trying to...
They were reacting to a problem
yeah.
that had already spiraled out of control.
So were they just trying to put out a fire that had already...
Engulf the house?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy,
And that kind of leads to the source's conclusion.
which is...
They say the economy is basically exhausted.
Hmm.
It doesn't have the tools to, like...
To easily bounce.
Exactly.
They paint a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah, they do.
They say there's not much appetite for more deficit financing.
I see.
And the monetary authority,
The central bank.
they're having trouble getting things back on track.
It's a tough spot to be in.
It is.
So we've talked a lot about the specifics of this.
Of this particular crisis.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
what about the bigger picture?
what do you mean?
Like, what can our listener, you, learn from all this?
I see what you're getting at.
We've gone deep into this one example,
Uh,
but are there, like, broader lessons here?
well, I think what's important to remember,
Yeah.
this isn't just about one country.
Okay.
It's about recognizing these patterns.
Patterns.
These patterns of unsustainable growth,
Uh-huh.
the dangers of speculation.
Gotcha.
These things can happen anywhere.
Not just in national economies.
Right, exactly.
So it's about understanding.
The underlying principles,
Yeah.
not just the specifics of this one case.
Okay, so we're developing this,
A framework
a framework for understanding.
for thinking critically about these things.
What's by economics?
Exactly.
That's cool.
It is. It's about equipping yourself with the tools
Yeah.
to analyze economic events.
Policies.
All of it.
So it's not just about this one country's problems.
It's about being able to assess any economic situation.
To see the warning signs.
Exactly.
That's a powerful idea.
It is. And you know what else?
What?
It can also help you make better decisions
You mean,
in your own life.
really?
Yeah, think about it.
Okay.
The source talks about how speculation
Uh-huh.
and easy credit
Yeah.
can lead to this
The
disconnect
point between.
between asset prices
Okay.
and real economic value.
I see.
And that has implications for your personal finances too.
Oh, that's interesting.
It is.
So understanding these bigger economic forces
Can help you make smarter choices.
with my own money.
Exactly. Like, let's say you're thinking about investing in a market that's booming.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could ask yourself,
Okay.
is this growth real?
Is it sustainable?
Right. Or is it just driven by speculation?
And easy money?
Exactly. It's about looking beyond the hype
Yeah.
and thinking about the long term.
This is making me rethink some of my investments.
It's important to be critical.
It is.
To be critical.
It is. And this deep dive can also make you a more informed citizen.
How so?
Well, when you hear politicians talking about the economy,
Yeah.
promising easy solutions,
Right.
you'll have the tools to analyze what they're saying.
To see if it makes sense.
Exactly.
Are they talking about real economic growth?
Yeah.
Or are they just trying to cover up?
To distract us.
Maybe.
So this deep dive isn't just some theoretical exercise.
No, not at all.
It's about how we engage with the world,
With the economy.
with our own finances.
It's about being informed.
Exactly. It feels like we've really uncovered a lot here.
We have.
Not just about this one country's problem, but about the things that can lead to those problems.
A pattern.
Exactly. So now what?
Now,
Yeah, what do we do with all this knowledge?
well, I think the source gives us a good place to start.
Okay.
If all this speculation was a big part of the problem,
Yeah.
what can we do to encourage more sustainable growth?
Long-term solutions.
Right, exactly.
It's a big question,
It is.
but an important one.
Absolutely.
We talked about recognizing the warning signs,
Yeah.
but how do we actually fix things?
How do we shift away from this
Yeah.
focus on quick wins and speculation?
To something that's
More
focused on real value.
Right, exactly.
It's gotta be complicated.
It is. It's multifaceted.
Yeah.
But the source does hint at some things.
Like what?
Well, they mentioned that there's not much appetite
Okay.
for more deficit financing.
Yeah.
So maybe that means we need to focus on
What?
policies that encourage,
Okay.
especially in productive sectors,
Instead of just relying on the government,
to spend more money.
right, to just pump money into the economy.
Exactly.
So it's about creating an environment where businesses can thrive
where they can innovate.
and create real value.
Exactly. That's the key.
It makes sense. But what about the problems we're facing right now?
What do you mean?
No.
What do you mean?
The source talks about high public debt,
Uh-huh.
credit defaults,
Yeah.
a struggling monetary authority.
Right.
How do we deal with all that
It's not easy.
while also building a more sustainable future?
It's a balancing act for
There's
sure.
no easy fix, is there?
I don't think so. With the debt,
Yeah.
we might need to combine fiscal discipline
Okay.
with measures that stimulate growth.
I see.
And as for the credit defaults,
Yeah.
maybe that means we need better regulations
But not regulations that,
that stifle innovation.
right, exactly.
We need to find that balance.
Between encouraging responsible lending
Yes.
and still giving people access to credit.
It's tricky.
It is. And that's why this deep dive is so important.
It helps us understand the challenges.
Makes us think critically about solutions.
Exactly. It's not just about identifying problems.
It's about finding ways to fix them.
And that's where the real work begins.
So to our listeners,
Yeah. We leave you with this.
Okay.
As you read the news.
As you listen to these debates.
Remember what we talked about today?
Those tough questions.
Think about the long-term consequences.
Most importantly.
Stay curious.
Yes.
Understanding these issues.
It's the first